What's going on, football fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with a Monday Night Football preview for tonight's Jets versus Chargers game. We're going to go through what you need to know both for fantasy and for Showdown, and then afterwards we'll take a look at the Underdog fantasy and Prize Picks boards to give you an idea of some of the prop exposure I'm getting to as well. So for fantasy, we'll talk about the chalk, some of the different game scripts you might want to keep an eye on, and then towards the end, how I'm attacking those two prop boards. So a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. With our Showdown slate tonight, we've got an intriguing matchup, especially when you take a look at each of the individual matchups on each side of the ball. So we'll start off with the positive side, right? Each team's strength. You've got the Chargers offense versus that Jets defense. It's strength on strength. That is going to be the real battlefield tonight. And then on the other side of things, you've got weakness versus weakness, right? You've got that Chargers defense that can be a little bit suspect at times going against a Jets-led offense with Zach Wilson at the helm that has not necessarily been that potent to this point. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a slogfest, right, when the Jets are on offense, even with that Chargers defense. And on the other side of things, I'm not so sure you're going to see that potent passing attack that we're used to with the Justin Herbert. You've got that pass rush to the Jets that can be a problem. Guys like Sauce Gardner in that secondary, a few other playmakers at safety there that make things really difficult for the opposing offenses. So I think that this game, though the Chargers are the deserving favorites, might be a little bit more of a slog than people think. And the more and more this game can turn ugly, the more turnovers that Jets defense can force, the more competitive it's going to be as well. So I think there are a few interesting ways to attack this kind of showdown slate that maybe aren't as conventional as what is everyone else is going to go out there and do. So we'll start with the conventional, right? What is going to be the quote-unquote chalk for tonight's slate? Well, in general, it's going to be the Chargers, right? They are a slight favorite, right? 3.5-point favorites as of right now, and are the team that's the quote-unquote better offense, the team with more fantasy upside. The unfortunate part is that as chalk, they're not only more, ownership, right? Not only are they higher owned, but they're also higher in terms of price tag, right? They've got a 12 grand Austin Eckler. They've got Justin Herbert at nearly $12,000, carrying significantly higher ownership than some of their counterparts on the Jets. So whether it's the quarterbacks that are nearly $4,000 in terms of a difference, $3,000 difference between their price tags there, or even some of the value plays like a Quinn Johnston that are mega chalk, right, compared to the rest of the range. So if you're wondering, what the common game script is going to be tonight, right, what a lot of the field is going to do, it's going to be 4-2 Charger stacks, right? It's going to be taking 4, maybe even 5 players from the Chargers, and then taking a Breece Hall or a Garrett Wilson as a buyback, and probably a mid-tier to lower-tier guy on the Jets. That's how everyone is going to build lineups. You may have a few, right, that take a Breece Hall and a Garrett Wilson as their buyback. A few brave souls, right, that might go like a Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson as their buybacks on the Jets. But outside of that, you're not going to see that much creativity, right? People are going to jam in the Ecklers, the Justin Herbert +1 wide receiver. Without Joshua Palmer, right, guys like Quinn Johnston going to be relatively popular. Darius Davis is also going to see quite a bit of snaps for the Chargers. He's only $200. So if you're looking for the chalk tonight, it's the Chargers side. It's these Chargers wide receivers that are playing for an injured Joshua Palmer. Of course, Mike Williams, right, going to be out for quite some time. And on the flip side, right, in terms of price, in terms of ownership, pretty much any metric you want to look at, the Jets are being slightly disrespected, whether it's with the price tags, right? $10,400 is your most expensive Jet with Breece Hall. In terms of ownership, right, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, still getting a good amount of attention, right? Both of them right around the 50% ownership mark, but down the board is where you start to see ownership fall off. You've got Lazard at just 23%. Jets defense, which is much stouter, right, than the Chargers defense, is actually lower owned than the other team there. Then down low, right, Quinn Johnston's 31% owned in terms of flex plus captain, whereas you have guys like Tyler Conklin at just 23%. Obviously down here, like Dalvin Cook, for example, is only 6% owned. Randall Cobb is only 9.4% owned. Third string running back for the Jets, but does play quite a bit on third downs. Michael Carter is only 9.3%, whereas you have your Donald Parhams, right, who's 13% owned. Quinn Johnston, who we mentioned before. Darius Davis, even a Gerald Everett, who's relatively chalky tonight, that I think are all very similar plays, right? Like in terms of these mid-tier options, between Allen Lazard and Gerald Everett, I think they're pretty much the same play. You can say I actually have Lazard at slightly higher ownership, But if that's the case, right, I'd rather go Gerald Everett, right? I'd rather take the slightly lower owned play there. But outside of that one case here, where the guy on the Jets is higher owned, down low, it's not even close, right? Like Quinn Johnston, Donald Parham are the chalk in this range, right? If you compare the running backs, let's just say the tight ends, right? Donald Parham is actually lower owned than Tyler Conklin, but Parham is your backup tight end, right? And he's half the ownership, right, as a starting tight end on the other team. I mean, look at the projection difference, right? 2.3 points per dollar as opposed to 1.6. I don't understand why Tyler Conklin isn't way more chalky, right, than a Donald Parham would be, considering he's going to play so many more snaps. And arguably, I think it's just the better player, right, between the two. Tyler Conklin, not really a flashy tight end prospect, but has pretty sure hands and catches quite a few red zone targets. So in general, I think the way that I'm going to attack tonight, I haven't built my lineups yet, is going to be more of a Jets heavy approach, right? A lot of 3-3s, where maybe rather than taking Herbert and Eckler as my spend ups, maybe I just take Eckler as my buyback and I try and build around Zach Wilson, right? Maybe it is a Garrett Wilson at captain. Maybe it is a Zach Wilson that I'm maybe even taking at captain there. Just trying to be a little bit more different about it. So my exposure tonight, right, is going to be hoping that this game stays competitive. Maybe even the off scenario that the Jets pull off the upset tonight, because they're going to be significantly lower owned in those large field contests. It's that game theory approach, right? I'm trying to win first place, trying to leverage myself against the field. And the fact of the matter is, all of the 4-2 Charger stacks that I think are probably the quote-unquote smart play for tonight, right? If I was playing cash, it would for sure be a 4-2 Charger stack. But in large field GPPs, can be plenty of those 3-3s or even 4-2s for the Jets. So that's how I'd recommend attacking tonight. In terms of some of my favorite captains, I think Garrett Wilson captain makes plenty of sense, is affordable, plus brings you that top end upside. If you're going to go with a Jets heavy lineup, let's say like a 4-2 Jets, which would certainly be outside the box, right? A lot of my lineups are going to be 3-3s. Just for full transparency, but like a Breece Hall on a 4-2 would be a great captain, right? Assuming that they're controlling the time of possession, right? Winning the game over the first 3 quarters. Down there towards the mid-tier, you can even consider like a Zach Wilson as like a middle-tier captain. Guys like Alan Lazard are complete dart throws. Quinn Johnston, though I do think he's a little bit chalky as a value play, could get there at captain. I mean, he's the sort of player that could score a touchdown, get you like 7-8 catches, close to 100 yards. As the number 2 wide receiver for the Chargers, you've seen those kind of players shine, right? Joshua Palmer, right, posting a bunch of fantasy points, being an optimal captain. Mike Williams, right, is known for that over the last 3-4 years. With him out of the offense, somebody has to step into that volume, and it's not going to be Darius Davis, right? Darius Davis probably going to play like 30, maybe 50% of snaps tonight there on the high end. Whereas Quinn Johnston will probably play like 75 to 85% of snaps. So if you're going to take a value tier guy at captain tonight, I think that Quinn Johnston's probably the best guy for that build. But like I said, a lot of 3-3s for me, potentially using like a Garrett Wilson at captain. I think that Austin Eckler, right, even in a 3-3 build, could easily be your captain as well. Because if you're going to take more Jets players, let's say 3 of them in a lineup together, you're going to have salary to spend, right? Let's assume that you're avoiding Justin Herbert just for the sake of this lineup. Let's say you started with like an Eckler captain, maybe you took both Wilsons together, maybe you threw in an Alan Lazard as your other player on the Jets. You're going to have enough money left, because these Jets players aren't that expensive, to still take maybe you get their Quinn Johnston in there, right, as one of your players, and then maybe one of the kickers is your last player in that lineup. So the salary is a little bit steep, right, on some of these Chargers players, but as long as you're not taking all 3 in the same lineup, you're not going to have that much of an issue going out there and spending your salary. All right, and now for a few props that I like for tonight. So first off, it's the over on Quinn Johnston's receptions. They've got him at 3 receptions, and last week was able to break the 5 mark. Was a player that came in at halftime, took over for an injured Joshua Palmer, and really never looked back, right? Was getting plenty of looks, was playing almost every snap with Joshua Palmer out. And tonight, though you do have Sauce Gardner on the other side, I think a lot of that attention is going to go to Keenan Allen, right? As it deservingly should, right? Keenan Allen, a big target, down the play sort of wide receiver that needs to get shut down, right? If the the Jets have any chance of winning this game. So hopefully Quinn Johnston can avoid the Sauce Gardner Island out there. If that's the case, you could see even more targets, right, than you'd expect out of the rookie. And last week showed you exactly the kind of upside that he has. And that was only in like 2/3 of a game. So if he goes out there for all 4 quarters, is getting those sort of looks, I think he soars over this 3 projection. He's at 2.5 on a few books. He's at 3.5 on a few other books. I'm certainly more in agreement with the books that have him at 3.5 receptions. Then at the bottom, we got Garrett Wilson, who's at 5.5 receptions on most books. They've got him juiced under, which I think is a little bit suspect, right? Once again, it's a situation where I don't agree with the juice, because Garrett Wilson, he's the sort of player that's had like 7, 8, 11 catch games over his last 5 starts. In this game script is ideal, right? It's against a weak secondary, right? A team that lets up quite a few passing yards to opposing attacks, and it's in a negative game script, right? Though I think that the Jets might keep this more competitive than we expect, the common sentiment around the industry is that the Chargers are going to get the job done tonight, right? They're on the road, but they are the better team. So if that's the case, right, if the Jets are going to be playing from behind, which I tend to agree with in most scenarios, Garrett Wilson's going to get even more touches, even more targets out there, and he's already been very consistent over this line. So against this secondary that doesn't really have anybody that can shut down a Garrett Wilson, right? There's no Sauce Gardner, right, out there in the Chargers secondary. It makes me like both of the spots. There's decent push equity at both of these projections, plus all the over equity that we just went through. And now over on Prize Picks, where we're taking the same 2 props, right? So going to keep this relatively quick here. The DNP roll is a little bit different, right? If one of these were to push, you do have the opportunity to go out there and still win 1.5x. But yeah, like both of these projections on both sites, and honestly, because of some of the sportsbook juice, I don't expect them to get bumped, which a lot of times for this video specifically, a lot of the plays that I put out, especially over there in Underdog, tend to bump. But with the kind of juice that we have here, oh, and look, dude, this is a meme. It's a good thing we caught this live on video. Now, I'm glad it's for the content. Garrett Wilson got bumped live on here. So this is what I deal with when I make these videos. I'm not even going to cut this out of this video at this point, because I think it's just perfect comedic timing there. That's what's tough about this content, right? Why you guys got to join the Patreon is a lot of times I go out there, record these videos, spend all the time, putting in the editing, so on and so forth, and then things get bumped before I can even upload them. So go over there, enter an Underdog, right, where it hasn't been bumped to this point. But if you really needed to get exposure, you could take Garrett Wilson over 5.5, right? I do have confidence in him getting there, but I just found that a little bit funny, right, that would happen on stream just as I'm saying that hopefully it wouldn't happen. I mean, that's just... It doesn't get better than that. It's like they have a mic listening to me or something like that. A little bit sketch. But either way, guys, those are the props over there on Prize Picks. Best of luck tonight with your exposure. Alrighty, guys, that's all for the Monday Night Football preview. Like I was saying there before, check out the Patreon if you want access to all of my picks for tonight. On there, the spreadsheet is posted without being censored, so it's got all of my player poll on there, all the different script notes, player notes that I'm posting to make sure you guys have an idea of what I'm thinking for tonight, and for all the different prop exposure I'm getting to as well. So there's a link down below. It's on my Patreon page. Helps support the channel and gives you a quick, easy way to access all that info for your own process and for your own results. Best of luck out there tonight, whether you're playing props or over there on the DFS side. Hopefully I see a few of your names towards the top of the GPPs. Hit that like button on the way out here, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the content in the future. Best of luck, like I said before. Appreciate the support here on the channel, and let's go out there and have ourselves an evening.